My name is Diana Claremont. I'm 36, and if you drove past my house just outside Denver, you'd probably think I'm one of those women who has it all: a pretty lakeside home, a husband in a tailored suit, quiet mornings watering potted herbs by the window. That illusion is easy to maintain when you're the one scrubbing every surface until it shines. But here's what people don't see. I used to be an architect. I was good too. Not just good on paper, but late nights, tight deadlines, lead the team kind of good. Then, life turned. My mom got sick, ALS, and my husband Gavin said the words I didn't realize would haunt me. "You're so good at caring for people, Di. Maybe this is where you're really needed." So I stepped back, one foot, then the other, and before I knew it, I'd left the firm, boxed up my drafting table, and became the full-time caretaker no one asked to be, but everyone quietly expected me to be. Gavin, meanwhile, kept rising. Promotions, bonuses. He told me, "We're a team, babe." But I never saw his hands in the mess. Just mine. Mom passed in late fall, and suddenly I inherited a chunk of real estate in Santa Fe. 3 rental properties, a small office building, and a Lakeview parcel my parents never sold. It wasn't some empire, but it was enough to turn heads. Gavin smiled like a proud husband when we signed the deeds together. Said it was our next chapter. I didn't know then that he was already writing his own version of the story, without me in it. We used that money to move into a 2-story Craftsman on Sloan's Lake. Gorgeous view. New appliances. Gavin even got a boat, for God's sake. At first I thought, this is healing. This is the reward for the years I gave up. But I started noticing odd things. He stopped eating dinner with me. First, it was late work calls. Then, client meetings that ran into midnight. I'd wake up alone more often than not, and when I'd ask gently, "Is everything okay?" he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Don't worry. You always worry too much." I wanted to believe him. I did. Until one evening, I reached into the dryer for his suit pants, and his wallet fell out. Now, Gavin's not careless. He's obsessive with his things. But that wallet spilled open right at my feet, and one little paper fluttered out. A receipt. From a boutique hotel in Sedona, Arizona. 2 nights, king suite. Not for a conference, not a business chain, a spa retreat. He hadn't told me anything about a trip to Arizona. My stomach twisted. I didn't confront him right away. I needed to be sure. I told myself I was just being paranoid. But then it happened again. A second trip. Another sudden work emergency. This time I checked his suitcase the moment he left. And tucked inside, zipped between his socks, was a small bottle of cologne I'd never seen before, and a pair of earrings. Silver, delicate, not mine. My hands shook. I took a photo of them, put everything back exactly where it was. And that night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and remembered something I'd tried to forget. Last month, he made me sign a power of attorney form for emergencies. He'd been so gentle, so loving that day. Said it was just in case something happened while he traveled. I signed it without thinking, without reading the fine print. That morning, he'd kissed my cheek and left for Phoenix. But I knew where he really was, and I knew what I had to do next. The day Gavin left for Phoenix, I packed a small bag, loaded up my old Honda, and followed the location ping I'd slipped into his golf bag 2 nights before. I didn't even tell my sister where I was going. Part of me didn't want to admit what I already knew. That my husband wasn't just hiding something. He was hiding someone. The drive to Sedona felt like I was heading straight into a storm I couldn't outrun. My thoughts spiraled in every direction. Maybe he's just helping a friend. Maybe there's a logical explanation. Maybe I'm crazy. But then I'd remember the earrings, the way he started flinching when I walked into a room, or the receipt tucked into his wallet like an afterthought, as if I wouldn't dare look. It was almost noon when I reached the address I'd pulled from a bank notification he forgot to mute. A modest Adobe-style house on a quiet road, nestled between red cliffs and cactus shadows. A white SUV sat in the driveway. same one he'd said was company issued. I parked a block away and waited, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Then, just before 2 p.m., the door opened. Gavin stepped out, wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans I didn't recognize. And behind him, a woman. Blonde, early 30s maybe. She laughed, tossed her hair over one shoulder, then bent down and scooped up a little girl with the same wavy chestnut hair Gavin had as a kid. The little girl wrapped her arms around his neck and said, "Daddy, are we still going to the creek?" I don't know how I didn't scream. I just sat there, frozen, watching my world split open on a stranger's lawn. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just that he had another woman, or even a child. It was that he had everything I'd spent years praying for. The family, the laughter, the affection he used to give me, now handed to someone else like I never existed. I'd spent 4 years doing IVF. I was poked, prodded, drained physically and emotionally. Every failed cycle felt like death. Gavin always said, "We'll keep trying. I'm in this with you." All those nights I wept alone in the bathroom. He was already building a new family somewhere else. I pulled out my phone and took photos. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet, but because I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Later that evening, I followed them again, this time to a park near Cathedral Rock. The girl, Lily, ran ahead while Gavin and the woman sat on a bench. I sat far enough away not to be noticed, but close enough to hear snippets of conversation. "Have you told her yet?" the woman asked. "Not yet," Gavin replied. "She's fragile. I need her calm before I take the next step." I felt sick. I didn't need a translator to know who she was. I was the fragile one. And the next step? God knows what that meant. The woman nodded slowly, then reached into her purse and handed him a manila folder. Gavin flipped through it, page by page, his expression unreadable. I could only see parts of the label on the front. Claremont Evaluation Packet. My name. I stared, barely breathing. He had taken the power of attorney. He had asked me strange medical questions over dinner the other week. He'd told me to rest more, that I seemed forgetful. I thought it was concern, but he was setting me up. Was this woman a therapist? A fake? A plant? I didn't know, but I did know one thing. This wasn't just infidelity. This was preparation. He was preparing to have me declared mentally unstable. And maybe, just maybe, that little girl wasn't the only one calling him daddy. I didn't go home that night. I drove to a cheap motel off I-17 with a broken vending machine and a flickering hallway light. I locked the door, bolted it, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the folder I'd photographed in the park. Claremont Evaluation Packet. I zoomed in on the tag hanging from the woman's purse. H. Bell, LCSW. That was the blonde. Hannah Bell. She was not a therapist. A few clicks later, I found her LinkedIn. No licenses, no credentials, no state board listing, just a freelance life coach with vague buzzwords like emotional restoration and intuitive healing. She wasn't helping him. She was in on it. The next morning, I drove into town, stopped at a coffee shop with decent Wi-Fi, and started digging deeper. If Gavin was willing to gaslight me into a false mental health diagnosis, what else had he done that I didn't know about? I pulled credit reports, searched public records, searched for any properties tied to his name, or aliases. Gavin Claremont, Gavin S. Claremont, Gavin Sinclair. Nothing popped up under aliases. But then, something strange. A marriage license, from 8 years ago, filed in San Diego County. Gavin Sinclair and Emily Stratton. I sat back. My skin went cold. I stared at the date. That was during our second round of IVF. I clicked further, hands trembling, and that's when I saw the next document. Emily Stratton, deceased, death certificate 3 years ago. Cause undetermined, found at home. Coroner's note, possible overdose. No known mental health history. Partner listed as fiancé, Gavin Sinclair. I slammed my laptop shut and ran to the bathroom. Threw up. My chest wouldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something else entirely. Gavin hadn't just lied. He had done this before. And Emily? She was me. Just earlier. Just silenced. I knew what he was doing now wasn't some improvisation. He had a system. Charm them. Gaslight them. Sign the paperwork. Make them doubt reality until they were a shell of who they used to be. Then take everything. I sat there for what felt like hours, playing every memory backward. Every time Gavin had told me I was forgetting things. Every time he called me overly emotional or said I was spiraling. He was laying the groundwork to erase me, just like he had done to her. And here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. I called a friend from college, Erin, who now works at a public records office in Santa Fe. I asked her if she could run a quick scan on the lakefront property I'd inherited from my mom. She pulled it up and said, "Diana, why is Gavin's name on the title?" I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" I choked out. "It was updated last week, filed electronically. Looks like power of attorney authorization. You didn't sign this?" I didn't even answer her. I couldn't. My hands went numb. He'd already moved. He was already transferring my inheritance. I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was days away from losing everything. But that night, as I sat in my car watching the moon rise over the canyon, something inside me snapped. Not out of rage, not out of grief. Something clearer. I didn't need to confront Gavin. Not yet. I needed to outplay him, and I knew exactly where to start. After I hung up with Erin, I sat in that parking lot in Sedona for over an hour, staring at the black sky like it could give me answers. My hands were ice cold, but my jaw was locked. I wasn't crying anymore. I was calculating. I knew I couldn't go to the police yet. I had nothing hard enough to stick. A forged signature? Gavin would just say I was confused, delusional. He had already built the narrative. Fragile Diana. The forgotten architect who gave up her career and slowly lost her mind. And the worst part? I'd signed that damn power of attorney myself, trusting him. I needed someone who could work in shadows, someone smart, careful, and quiet. That's when I remembered Devin Fields. He wasn't a friend, more like a ghost from my mom's past. Devin was a kid my mom used to tutor for free back when she taught at a community college. He'd been in trouble, hacking school systems, wiping grades, the kind of genius no one wanted to believe could do better. But my mom did. She helped him get a GED, pointed him toward trade certs, and never let him feel like a lost cause. I tracked him down through an old contact of hers. Now he ran a tiny cybersecurity firm out of Albuquerque, mostly boring stuff. Firewalls, small business systems, data recovery. But when I called and told him I was Mara Claremont's daughter, he paused for a long time, then said, "Come tomorrow. I'll clear the day." The next morning, I showed up at his office with everything I had. Flash drives, photos, timelines, voice memos, the works. Devin didn't flinch, just asked, "How fast do you need this?" I told him, before he makes me disappear like the last one. What followed was 2 days of silent, relentless work. Devin pulled Gavin's full digital footprint, work emails, dummy Gmail accounts, burner phones, even metadata from photos Gavin thought he'd deleted. The man was sloppy but slick enough to fool most. We found dozens of encrypted messages between Gavin and Hannah, mostly through a hidden app disguised as a weather widget. The content? Financial strategy, mental health lingo, terms like phase 2 and containment plan. But the one that made my stomach twist was a screenshot of my will, updated without my knowledge. My name, my forged signature. Everything left to Gavin Claremont in the event of mental incapacitation or death. I wanted to scream, but Devin stopped me. "We can build a digital trail, backtrack timestamps, match IPs, but that's not enough to nail him legally," he said. "You need a witness inside his life." And that's when it clicked. Hannah. She was the weak link. If she didn't know what happened to Emily Stratton, or worse, if she did, she was a liability Gavin couldn't fully control. So I reached out. Through a burner number, I sent her one line. I know what he did to Emily. You're next. Meet me, one chance. I expected silence, maybe threats. But 36 hours later, I got a reply. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Coffee stash on Bell Road. Don't bring anyone. I didn't sleep that night. Just paced my motel floor, imagining every version of how it could go wrong. She showed up on time. No makeup. Dark circles, nervous hands. I played it slow. Showed her photos of Emily, the death certificate, my forged will. At first, she denied everything, said I was paranoid. But when I handed her the printouts of messages between her and Gavin, some of them sent from her phone but written in his exact phrasing, she crumbled. Gavin told me Emily overdosed, she whispered. He said she was suicidal, that he tried to help her, that she fell apart after her dad died. I leaned in. Her dad's alive. He lives in San Diego. And then Hannah broke. Tears, full body trembling. He said you were slipping, that you were dangerous. I helped him build a mental health case. I didn't know he was trying to. I swear, I didn't think he'd hurt you. I looked her in the eye. You already helped him start. Now you help me finish it. And then, as I pushed the recorder button on my phone and slid it across the table, she said the words I'll never forget. Okay, I'll tell you everything, including what he did to Emily and how he made it look like an accident. Hannah kept her word. We spent hours at Devin's office recording every detail she remembered. The fake psych documents, the messages Gavin fed her to send from her phone, the insurance conversation he'd slipped in once. About me. About what would happen if the stress finally broke her. She had doubts before, she said. But he always had an answer. Always gentle. Always just convincing enough to make her feel crazy for questioning him. I knew that version of him too well. With Hannah's testimony, Devin's digital evidence, and the forged documents Gavin had so carelessly left scattered across both his phones and mine, we went to a lawyer, Sarah Patel. Sharp, focused, quiet in that dangerous kind of way. She listened to everything without interrupting once. When I finished, she tapped her pen twice and said, "You're sitting on a federal case. Let's make it count." We filed a petition for an emergency injunction to freeze all jointly held assets, including the Santa Fe properties, the accounts he had quietly moved into under Gavin Sinclair, and the fake trust fund I hadn't even known existed. Then came the arrest. It happened on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after my meeting with Sarah. Gavin was at a steakhouse downtown, having brunch with a business contact. Or so he thought. It was a sting. The contact was a plainclothes investigator from the DA's office. They let me watch from a distance as Gavin was cuffed in front of 3 clients and half the Denver elite. I watched his eyes scan the sidewalk, confused at first, then panicked. And when he finally spotted me across the street, standing still with nothing but quiet in my chest, he froze. That polished smirk he always wore like a uniform. Gone. He knew. He knew I was the one who flipped the board. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Gavin Claremont, aka Gavin Sinclair, was charged with multiple counts of fraud, falsifying medical records, attempted misappropriation of inheritance through power of attorney abuse, and obstruction of justice. His connection to Emily Stratton's death was re-examined, though the case was ruled inconclusive. But the civil suit from Emily's father? That one stuck hard. Hannah testified. So did Devin. So did I. I stood on that stand and told the truth with a steady voice. Not because I was fearless, but because I had already lived through the worst version of this story. Everything now was just cleanup. In the end, the judge sentenced Gavin to 12 years without parole, asset seizure, professional disbarment from any business license, and the cherry on top? A court-ordered statement of guilt made public and published in the Colorado Legal Tribune. He didn't look at me once during sentencing, and that suited me just fine. I sold the lake house, bought a small cabin up north, Nothing fancy, but it has a view of the pines and a screened-in porch where I paint again. I started teaching a free workshop for women coming out of coercive relationships. Not because I think I'm some savior, but because when you've survived being erased, there's power in helping someone else rewrite their name. As for Hannah, she moved out of state with her daughter. We're not close, but we check in sometimes. She still says sorry every time. And I always tell her, "You helped stop him." That's enough. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. The people who try to make you feel small are terrified of how big you'll become if you ever break free. And once you do, they lose the only power they ever had. If any part of my story hit close to home, I hope you'll share yours below. You never know who needs to hear it. And if you've ever doubted your gut, maybe this is the sign to trust it. Thanks for sitting with me through all of this. If you want to walk with me through more stories like mine, you're always welcome here.